Beyond the Mirror podcast. This episode will bring incredible value to your personal wellness and health. I have a guest, Donald Gordon, who is functional nutritionist. We met with Donald not long ago, but he's so insightful and knowledgeable, and we just clicked. And 2 months later, he's a guest on my podcast. Welcome, Donald.
Very pleased to be here.
Thank you. Donald, can you please tell us about your professional career?
Well, I think it began actually when I was quite young, because I was always interested in health and wellness and performance and sport. I was a very sporty youngster or teenager, always very, very active, very interested in sport.
And I read in your bio that you have been doing karate and triathlon.
That's right. So I started really in a local club doing karate, and then I got to train with some of the top karate exponents in the UK and representing England for that particular discipline, and it instilled in me a sense of connection, community, discipline, and those sorts of things that can be quite useful, and also performance in terms of how you show up. And I think that it's something that was instilled in me from quite an early age. But then, from a professional perspective, I didn't pursue that. I went into media and marketing and financial services, into an office, but I still kept training in the background, so I was still very active. And then, back in, I think, around about 2002, I got injured. And I had a back injury, which was a bulging disc in the back. And that set me back. I went to see lots of different practitioners, and that included a chiropractor, a physiotherapist, a naturopath, and an osteopath in Harley Street. My back was so badly inflamed, a lot of inflammation, a lot of pain, a lot of discomfort, and I could hardly walk. So it brought on a particular, I would say, awareness of what it was like actually not to be able to perform. However, it was a catalyst for me into becoming a functional nutritionist, really, but also studying nutrition, because the naturopath and osteopath in Harley Street gave me an intensive course of enzyme therapy.
And was it effective?
To treat the inflammation,
yeah,
to reduce the inflammation. And I'm a curious individual, always been curious about anatomy and physiology and biochemistry, those sorts of things. But then that really got my interest because I was in pain. How could I reduce the inflammation without taking painkillers, for example? So that was quite a revelation to me. It gave me an intensive course of enzyme therapy, which is like 10 capsules to take per day. And I thought, wow, this is something that I wasn't conscious or aware of. But it helped to reduce the inflammation. And so then I could have more structural work done, which adjusted the spine. And I got super, super curious about that. The functional capacity of the body as a whole. And so that was really the catalyst for me to start a course I became an advanced exercise coach, did remedial exercise and therapy, did nutrition and weight management, applied nutrition. However, it still wasn't enough for me. Because I really like to go into detail in things, and I like to know how things work, how they really work from a technical perspective. Even when it's performing in triathlon, or if it was karate, I was always interested in the technical application and the practice. And so I went away to the Centre for Nutrition and Lifestyle Management in Woking and did a 3-year degree course in nutritional science. And that included anatomy and physiology, pathophysiology, nutritional therapy, advanced coaching for nutritional therapy. And that really piqued my desire and interest to go deeper into being able to avoid or how to really attenuate injury and get the best possible health outcome without having to take prescriptive medication.
And may I ask you, Don, did you try a traditional method when you injured your back? Did you try to go to NHS, to see your GP, to see orthopedic, probably consulting pain specialist, or did you went with alternative roads straight away?
Combination.
Okay.
So the combination was that, yes, I had to have an MRI scan. I went to an osteopath. I went to my local GP, who did various provocative tests to find out if there was anything structurally going on. He mentioned things like cauda equina syndrome, which is, quite a familiar syndrome for people who have that condition, because it was beginning to impact, my whole structure and pain management. So yes, I did take some prescriptive medication for the pain, but I always had this kind of, maybe there's something else, maybe there's something more I can do. And I was seeing a chiropractor, and so I had an inclusive integrative approach. So from that integrative approach, I was able to then find out what worked best for me, the whole aspect of personalization, right? So I found that I didn't tolerate the prescriptive medication for too long because I had side effects, and that was skin. I have very sensitive skin, and you'll be able to relate to that, of course. So, rashes,
dryness,
and so if I have particular types of products, it's problematic for me, for my skin. I'll have psoriasis, I'll have eczema,
Again, we're coming here to inflammation.
We are. And so with the studying alongside the prescriptive model, so the whole kind of picture, the 360 approach is one that now I bring into my practice and space, and you do clearly as well. And so I think this is a very powerful space to occupy because it is empowering to know that there are alternative modalities that you can use. There are different product ranges that you can use, and it's not one size fits all. So that is a very important component that I bring into a functional space rather than a box. When I look outside the box and we look at the whole picture holistically, well, are there herbs? Are there other things that occur naturally that can help the body? So with the natural enzyme therapy, as I say, that was a catalyst. And I did a module on my nutritional science course, which was herbs. And that was very interesting to me, understanding the herbal monograph, the mechanisms of action in the body, how it shows up it works systemically on the body. So with the enzymes, it helps reduce the inflammation, and it was natural, no side effects, very powerful if it was taken at the right level. So understanding the levels and also contraindications, and that's where we come into the conventional space. We need to understand that there are certain contraindications that can occur with prescriptive medications, and even if it's a herbal intervention. So understanding those kind of nuances is something that I bring into the space and have learned over time, having hundreds of different clients and doing lots of continued professional development and conferences.
And you have had experience where you went to Japan to study their way of living, mindset, practicing ikigai, their nutritional values as well. So can you share a little bit of that?
Well, I've always been interested in the East. An Eastern practice, and I'm a Tai Chi practitioner. I excelled in that area in practice because I think I was highly motivated, because I was always interested in, from the performance perspective, whether it be karate or martial arts or those types of things, whether it be Tai Chi, so the holistic picture, and how you can change the energy in the body. And I studied with a particular mentor from Hong Kong, who was called Master Taitan, from Wudang Mountain. So I learned a huge amount in terms of neuroendocrine therapy, in terms of parasympathetic nervous system, rest and digest, and the whole energetic picture. And then in Japan, obviously learning from particular practitioners out there and the way of living, whether it is in the Buddhist temples up in the hills in Nara, learning about longevity and the actual products that they bring into that space, and how it occurs naturally for them. In the West, we I think are a little bit more divorced from that natural kind of approach to lifestyle.
It's a different lifestyle and mindset, and I think we're very commercialized in West.
Yes.
When in East, we're more connected to the nature, to the basic where we come from.
Yes, the elements are very much a core part of how we show up seasonally, connected with the ocean, with the land, and I think when I travelled there extensively and going to different regions, you could see the regional variation of produce when it was close to the coast or whether it was in the mountain regions. And we shared a meal within a particular Nara temple, in a Buddhist temple. And the peace and serenity of that kind of environment, and the plant-based, predominantly plant-based regime that they brought into their practice, and the space for just that mindset of calmness, and as you say, ikigai. And also things like forest bathing, for example. Yeah. Those sorts of practices are deeply useful from a mental health and well-being perspective. So
it's incredible, Gordon. It seems you bringing so many pillars together within your practice, so that it's not just nutrition where we look at food alone. Can you please specify for those who are watching us what's the difference between functional nutritionist and traditional nutritionist?
I think it's something I gravitated into, and it started when I did my nutritional science degree. I began to see that there were biological systems that are connected, and then one of the things we were introduced to was the functional medicine approach. The Association for Functional Medicine, you'll be familiar with that particular body. And I think function and performance is something that I identified with. I was really interested in the functional systems and biological systems of the body. And so I tended to gravitate to that as a specialist area. And I used that within the performance context of my practice, working with athletes on a one-to-one basis, on a group basis, and looking at how they can optimize their function. So conventional nutritionists might just look at a few areas, and it might be weight management, it might be gut health, it might be autoimmune, it might be those sorts of conditions. From a functional medicine model perspective, I use the functional medicine matrix and that paradigm which informs my practice. And it's something that I think I use as opposed to a more traditional, conventional and narrower perspective, perhaps. Not saying it's any less effective, but I think that it has an approach which understands the connection of the biological systems and also the environment, which we've touched on as well.
And you mentioned word function quite a lot, and then also a few times we came across longevity. Would I be right to say that longevity is function? Because, you know, it's not about the number of years that you live. Longevity is how functional your body is through those years.
Yeah, very much so. I think I'm writing a book at the moment, and part of that is talking about the five pillars of longevity. Yes, it's movement. Yes, it's nutrition. Yes, it's mindfulness, and other and it's environmental. So it's functional detoxification. I think detoxification is a super interesting area in itself, but it's not just simply about what's happening internally, but it's also what's happening externally, what we're exposed to in terms of the
people, news.
Yes, it's the people, the social context. So it's connection. It's the social context, the environment, socially, but professionally.
Exactly.
And then environmentally, whether you're living by, close by to, a lot of a concentrated, industrialized area, urban area where there's a lot of electro smog, let's say, from car fumes, from industrial waste. You might work within, a particular factory environment, let's say. So that is going to have an impact on your vibrational energy.
Even cellular health.
And
Isn't it cellular
absolutely
health?
your cellular health. So looking at the cellular level, I think that how your cells are functioning, cellular health is very much a central part of how we show up. Are we are our mitochondria really performing as well as they can? And what are the stressors that mean that they are compromised? And so when we talk about health span and the way that we live our lives over time, I think, we can sometimes talk about upstream and downstream effects when it comes to health. And there are things that we can do to influence our genetic makeup epigenetically, not from the genes that we're given from birth, but how our genes perform. And so we can influence them from a nutritional health perspective, from an environmental health perspective, at a cellular level. How we do that is a combination of pillars.
And would I be right to say, Donald, that when you consult your patients, those who are interested in improving their health, their wellness, their mindfulness, their overall well-being, you're focusing on all those pillars? You're not only changing their diet, or is your main focus you're just looking at their dietary chart, what they eat, gives them advice, possibly some supplementation, or is it much wider picture?
I think it has to be a wide picture because it's uniquely personal. When Ola shows up, I want to know about that. I want to get a whole picture. I don't want a part. A part may be useful, but it's not the whole individual. So that 360 approach, I think, is super, super important. So I do like to get a health history, a background, and that will include, what do you do for a living? Have you got children? And what activity are you engaged in? So I'm interested in the whole picture. We haven't touched on nutrition yet, for example, have we? So then we haven't done any testing. We might do some testing if it's appropriate and it's required, because then we can get some data. So I think it's very important to look at the whole individual and not simply look at the surface.
Yes,
and you'll be very familiar with that. We're not interested in what we see, or the iceberg, 80% above. What we see is a lot is below the surface.
Yeah.
So looking, I like to do a very detailed map of the territory, and then we can get a picture of the potential imbalances, where they might be, biologically, neurologically, hormonally. There's a lot of components there. So a very detailed, prescriptive approach and functional approach that looks at the whole person. So I like to get a complete picture, even if it's just 30 minutes. But generally, with a consultation, I like to take time, which in conventional allopathic medicine practice, time is precious, and it's actually, there isn't enough time given current models of care to devote to a fully integrated approach.
But also it's a whole complex science. And when we first met and we have had this conversation with you over speaker dinner, and I mentioned to you how I was brought up, and to me it's all the topics about longevity and wellness. I feel it brings me back to my childhood. But I don't think that so many people who have been fortunate to brought up this way, with connection with the nature, growing up on food, vegetables, have the right mindset, because you are in a way isolated from social media news and all the influences. I think very often we just need to take, as a humans, a step back, before moving forward, to recharge our batteries, to reset ourselves. And very often I don't think that this knowledge I learned in medical school. It came from my grandfather, and to whom I'm very, very grateful. And that is why I have such an interest in this topic. But I didn't learn it in medical school. I didn't learn mindfulness and all the pillars of longevity. It's very much science-based, but which is guided by protocols. That protocols formulated obviously on data and research, but I don't think that all medical professionals have the knowledge on cellular health, right diet, right lifestyle, or even if they do, there is a limitation with the time.
Absolutely. I think there is that space now is there's a lot more attention given
Absolutely.
coming into that space, and it's very welcome, of course. I think that what we see is a growing body of groups, individuals who are becoming more conscious, aware of the need to create space to learn and actually take a step back, as you say.
And I do think that traditional medicine, I'm a scientist, I'm a dentist, I absolutely believe in traditional medicine. It's fantastic, and we're lucky to be in the UK and have NHS, but I think where nutritional side and functional nutritional side comes as a preventative measure, and I think that is something that has been heavily underlooked, and a lot of people may be not aware that this option is actually available.
Yes, I think more practitioners are becoming more more aware of it, and certainly I belong to the National Centre for Integrative Medicine and have developed educational modules for the students coming through, because my experience, like yours, I think if you've travelled a lot and visited different cultures and been in different environments, you get exposed to different ways of thinking, and you see different practices, and you become more aware of different ways of showing up. And like you, I'm a scientist, and I do believe in that. The evidence-based practice is central. However, it's not the whole story, is it?
Absolutely.
And I think that we're seeing a move now to prescribing lifestyle medicine.
Yeah.
It's becoming more and more a topic within conventional medicine circles. We're seeing the Integrative Personalised Medicine Conference, which is a very big conference, biggest conference in Europe, where practitioners coming from all over the world. These are doctors who are now thinking, I need to build this into my practice.
Regenerative side,
Regenerative medicine,
longevity medicine, functional medicine.
Very much so.
I think it's a huge, has seen a huge growth and huge interest. And Donald, what would be your advice for people who have interest in this sector and want to learn? So nutritional side, functional side, longevity side, like where do they start?
I think, I looked over the country for a particular organisation and group that kind of resonated with my own kind of desire and curiosity. So I looked at length and breadth of the country. There are some very interesting groups out there, such as the Institute for Optimum Health, which is Patrick Holford's group, ION. There's the Centre for Naturopathic Medicine, CNM, National Centre for Integrative Medicine, Centre for Nutrition and Lifestyle Management. All of these different groups and bodies do exist out there. So I'd say, have a good look. If that's your interest and your passion, even if you're a therapist, for example, you think you want to broaden your experience, you want to build a new modality into your practice to enable you to become more rounded, let's say, or you just want to learn another part or skill. I have learned about bioresonance therapy, for example, just recently over the past couple of years, because I think the vibrational energy medicine area is one to keep an eye out for, and I've started to use that in my practice. So that's something that's been around for a very long time, but it's only just coming into space. So bioresonance is a big area. I think it's more embraced in areas like Germany, for example, who have a big holistic outlook, and also they're very interested in homeopathy.
Yeah.
So homeopathic practice, if you're interested in that area, there are schools for homeopathy. So I get to meet lots of people from different circles, whether it be homeopathy, whether it be naturopathy, whether it be conventional medicine practice. And I think, in the words of a martial artist, Bruce Lee, he actually took lots of different influences from maybe boxing, maybe from karate, maybe from jiu-jitsu, and he built his own practice, which was Jeet Kune Do. And, he was a bit of a maverick. And I think with that kind of approach, you don't close yourself off. You're always open.
So it's about broad learning.
I think it's about openness, broad learning, and not being constrained by one particular modality or practice, but actually embracing new ideas, exploring new avenues. And I've always been a believer, and I've always had that curiosity. So if you're curious about something, I would say pursue it. You're interested in forest bathing, have a look, get a book.
Of course.
Listen to a podcast. And so, in this podcast, you bring different people in from different areas. And I think that's a very exciting and open practice to have. And then everybody learns together, because you can empower individuals with that knowledge and new knowledge. And maybe it's not so new.
Yeah.
It's maybe that old knowledge that grandfather had. And I think we do learn from our elders. If you do get to travel, or you've had that experience, I think there's a lot of value in listening to elders. Professor Walter Longo talks about it from Sardinia to Greece to Loma Lima, South America, Okinawa. These blue zones that have been talked about, you can learn from different communities.
There is a lot of documentary as well that is available out there. I think it's a whole pool of learning.
Yeah.
And now from our conversation, I think people also realize that nutrition is it's a complex science. So how people should choose from who receive advice on nutrition, and is any particular qualifications, registration to look at, where they can get this right advice and receive the best care in this area?
So there are non-regulatory organisations out there, and it may be BANT, it may be the British Association of Nutritional Therapy, for example. It may be, I'm a member of the Federation of Holistic Practitioners, and I have to do continued professional development to make sure that I'm still up to speed with current evidence and practice. And so there are different groups and bodies out there. BANT, as I mentioned, one is the British Association for Nutritional Therapy, and then you've got the Federation of Holistic Practitioners, and then you've got the Centre for Naturopathic Nutrition, CNN. And then you've got ION, which is the Institute for Optimum Nutrition. You've got the College of Nutritional Practice. So there's quite a few different groups out there. I would say make sure that you've got someone who is qualified, and they do have a practitioner status, or they have got not necessarily a degree, but they do have a diploma in nutritional therapy or practice. And so that's quite important, that you have got that grounding and foundation, I think, behind what you're practicing. For me, if I'm doing a Tai Chi practice, for example, I've got a certificate that, a certification. So someone who's got a certain level of certification is very, very important. And
Thank you so much for that. And also, in my nature of work, I'm specializing in cosmetic treatments, in skin health, wellness. We have seen a lot of transformation when we perform the treatment, but not transformation on the face, transformation from within. And I also believe that our beauty starts from within. It's about how we feel. would you relate and say that you have the same in your practice where you change people diets, their lifestyles, that mindfulness, that impacts goes not just about losing weight, but it's about beyond the mirror.
Absolutely, I think I think the title that you've chosen is very appropriate in terms of Beyond Mirror, because
Thank you.
what you see and how people show up, and I've seen hundreds and hundreds of consultations down through the years, and I think especially for women, because there's so much pressure from a media perspective on how you should look and how you should show up, and that can be hugely um, destructive.
Yeah.
In terms of mindset and in terms of practice. So I think that being sensitive and having a degree of empathy is absolutely vital. And I found that when I was doing my nutritional therapy training and doing the advanced coaching, mindset was very much a central part of understanding the individual and their story and getting them to relate their story. So looking below the surface is super important. And I found that to be, it's an emotional journey.
Yeah.
And particularly with the people that I have seen on a one-to-one basis, I think that I want to be able to bring something that's preventative into the space and that's useful, and it's not reinforcing a behavior pattern that's not helpful. So I do go through a particular protocol to find out what's really important for the individual. What's the number one thing that Ola wants to achieve from an outcome perspective? And so, I want to lose weight. Well, why? What's the reason for that? Or if I want to have a particular effect or performance or level, it's always about the why.
I think why is so important. Absolutely.
Central. And so what I found is that if you spend time and you allow that individual, they feel comfortable, safe, super important, that they can unpeel the layers that we all come with. And very often I think for women it's about confidence.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
That is the key. So is it about the weight? Well, it's the emotional weight, not the physical weight very often. And that comes in that territory. Ooh, I can almost feel myself, at this moment in time. You get a little sensation that it's very powerful. And so if you can bring confidence into that space, people want to feel confident.
Well, and I think that is possible to achieve by 360 combination approach. Don, thank you so much. It has been very valuable information and knowledge that you have shared with us. And just on the last note, I would like to ask where people who want to connect with you for advice, probably consultation, learning, how they can find you.
Well, they can find me through you, of course.
Thank you.
Through the clinical practice that you've got. I do have a website, which is dongordon.co.uk. And so they can connect with me there on Functional Nutrition Don on my Insta handle. And then, the social media space is one that I do it under, but it doesn't come naturally to me.
Well, the most important that we are socialized in real world, and I think that is what's matter.
Yeah, the connection for us in terms of face to face, I think is super important, and curating that space is what we're doing right now. So I think it's a great space to be occupying.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you.